Merry Christmas, friends. I hope that you all had a wonderful Christmas day. And one of the things I love about Christmas is that we get to continue to celebrate for 12 full days. So today, on this Sunday, we're still celebrating Christmas. And I want to tell you about one of my favorite books from childhood. It was The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is part of the Chronicles of Narnia series written by C.S. Lewis. My father read it to me when I was a kid, and I've read it to my children, and it's still just one of the best. So, in case you haven't yet read this book, let me tell you that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is a tale of four children who accidentally stepped through a wardrobe door and into another world. It's called Narnia. It is a winter wonderland, a magical place full of mythical beasts and talking animals. At first, it seems to be a charming fantasy world until they learn that it is frozen hard under the terrible rule of a white witch. And the children are in danger. Their very presence is a threat to the White Witch, who would see them destroyed. So I want to share with you an important turning point that occurs in the story. Three of the children, Peter, Susan, and Lucy, their brother Edmund has a different storyline. They are in hiding with Mr. and Mrs. Beaver. They are awakened one morning by a distant sound of sleigh bells, which throws them all into a panic. Mr. Beaver sneaks out of their hole to try to catch a glimpse of the White Witch's sleigh and where it might be headed. But instead of the White Witch, he discovers something else. Let me read this to you. "It's all right," he was shouting. "Come out, Mrs. Beaver. Come out, sons and daughters of Adam. It's all right. It isn't her." So Mrs. Beaver and the children came bundling out of the cave, all blinking in the daylight, and with earth all around them, all over them, and looking very frosty and unbrushed and uncombed with the sleep in their eyes. "Come on," cried Mr. Beaver, who was almost dancing with delight. "Come and see. This is a nasty knock for the witch. It looks as if her power is already crumbling." "What do you mean, Mr. Beaver?" panted Peter, as they all scrambled up the steep bank of the valley together. "Didn't I tell you," answered Mr. Beaver, "that she'd made it always winter and never Christmas? Didn't I tell you? Well, just come and see." And what they saw was indeed a sleigh, but it wasn't the White Witch's. He was a huge man in a bright red robe, bright as holly berries, with a hood that had fur inside it and a great white beard that fell like a foamy waterfall over his chest. Everyone knew him, because though you see people of his sort only in Narnia, you see pictures of them and hear them talked about even in our world, on this side of the wardrobe door. But when you really see them in Narnia, it is rather different. Some of the pictures of Father Christmas in our world make him look only funny and jolly. But now that the children actually stood looking at him, they didn't find it quite like that. He was so big and so glad and so real that they all became quite still. They felt very glad, but also solemn. "I've come at last," said he. "She has kept me out for a long time, but I have got in at last. Aslan is on the move. The witch's magic is weakening." You see, in the land of Narnia, a world enslaved by evil and frozen in never-ending winter, the first sign that the power of darkness is failing is Christmas. Soon the ice will be melting and spring will come. Soon the witch will be defeated. It's coming. It has begun. But there is still more that needs to happen. So Father Christmas, of course, has brought gifts for Mr. and Mrs. Beaver and for the children. He says to Peter, "These are your presents." And they are not tools, but toys. The time to use them is perhaps near at hand. Bear them well. And with these words, he handed to Peter a shield and a sword. The shield was the color of silver, and across it there rent a red lion, as bright as a ripe strawberry at the moment when you pick it. The hilt of the sword was of gold, and it had a sheath and a sword belt and everything it needed, and it was just the right size and weight for Peter to use. Peter was silent and solemn as he received these gifts, for he felt they were a very serious kind of present. And then he said, "Susan, Eve's daughter, these are for you." And Father Christmas handed her a bow and a quiver full of arrows and a little ivory horn. "You must use the bow and arrows, and you must use the bow only in great need," he said. "It does not easily miss. And when you put this horn to your lips and blow it, then wherever you are, I think help of some kind will come to you." Last of all, he said, "Lucy, Eve's daughter." And Lucy came forward. He gave her a little bottle of what looked like glass and a small dagger. "In this bottle," he said, "there is a cordial made of the juice of one of the fire flowers that grow in the mountains of the sun. If you or any of your friends are hurt, a few drops of this will restore them. And the dagger is to defend yourself at great need." So rather than toys, Father Christmas has given them tools that they will use in the hard days that are yet to come. Peter received a sword and shield. Susan gets bows and arrow and a horn with which to call for help. Lucy is given a healing potion and a dagger. So notice that each one of them will get something to help them to fight the witch and restore the world. And each of them also receives something to protect themselves and others from harm. Because Father Christmas knows that the birth of Christ is not like it's just one lovely day in the midst of all difficult days, and nor is it the end of all difficulty, all strife. But it is a new beginning. Christmas is in something new with more to come. So on this first Sunday of Christmas, we also heard in our scripture today from the Gospel of John that tells us something about the big picture of God's love for us. That Gospel says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. That all might sound a little confusing, but what it's telling us is that we need to know that light is always surrounded by darkness. Good is always surrounded by evil, but what's important for us to remember is that light is stronger than darkness. Good is stronger than evil. So John's Gospel also goes on to tell us something about the true gifts of Christmas. It says, from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. And it says the law was given through Moses, and that grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. The law of Moses is a path of love. It teaches us how to follow the path of love. And that path of love is a kind of protection. It keeps us away from things that can be hurtful and harmful. But love also does still make us vulnerable. Vulnerable in a world that is full of hard and dangerous things. And so the gift of Jesus Christ at Christmas is grace and truth. I bet you received some wonderful, delightful things at Christmas. But I want you to remember this today, that the true gift that God has given each and one of you is this path of love. And it is this grace and truth of Jesus who loves you. And you have all of these gifts: compassion and kindness and generosity and truthfulness. These are our weapons. These are weapons that banish the darkness from our world. These are the things that we have to use to make this world a brighter place. So, please remember that of all the gifts that you have been given, God gives the best ones. The path of love and grace and truth. They are unwrapped already, so put them to good use and have a very Merry Christmas.